To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Arthur Ford had survived 3 tours in military intelligence before he turned 30. He'd interrogated terrorists, decoded enemy communications, and once talked a suicide bomber into surrendering using nothing but patience and psychology. But none of that prepared him for the slow death of a marriage. He sat in his home office in suburban Arlington, Virginia, reviewing security protocols for his latest client, a defense contractor with government clearance issues. Arthur's consulting firm, Ford Security Solutions, had built its reputation on discretion and results. 15 years after leaving the Army, he'd created something he was proud of, a business that protected people without the moral compromises his old work demanded. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lauren was out again, her 3rd book club meeting this week. Arthur stared at his wedding photo on the desk. 10 years ago, Lauren Maxwell had been a paralegal with dreams of making partner at a prestigious firm. She'd been sharp, ambitious, beautiful. He'd fallen hard. Now, the woman in that photo felt like a stranger. Arthur's phone buzzed. His best friend and former Army buddy, Raymond Owen, had sent a text. "Drinks tomorrow? You sound stressed lately." Arthur smiled slightly. Raymond had a sixth sense for when something was wrong. They'd saved each other's lives in Kandahar. Bonds like that didn't break. He typed back, "Yeah, could use it." The front door opened. Lauren's heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Arthur glanced at his watch. 10:47 p.m. Book clubs didn't run this late. "You're still up," Lauren said, appearing in the doorway. She wore a black dress he didn't recognize, her makeup perfect despite the late hour. "Big contract. You know how it is." Arthur kept his voice neutral. "How was book club?" Riveting discussion about postmodern literature. She didn't meet his eyes. "I'm exhausted. Going to bed." "What book?" Arthur asked casually. Lauren paused. What book did you discuss?" A flicker of panic crossed her face before she recovered. "The one I told you about last week. You never listen anyway." She disappeared upstairs. Arthur sat in the darkness for a long time. He was trained to spot deception, to read micro-expressions and vocal stress patterns. Lauren was lying. He'd known for weeks. The question wasn't whether she was having an affair. The question was why his instincts were screaming that something far worse was coming. Santiago Graham entered Arthur's office like he owned the building. Designer suit, Rolex, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was the CEO of Graham Holdings, a real estate development firm that had exploded in growth over the past 5 years. "Mr. Ford, thank you for seeing me on short notice." Santiago's handshake was firm, calculated. "I've heard excellent things about your work. What can I do for you, Mr. Graham?" "Call me Santiago. I'm developing a mixed-use property downtown, residential, commercial, very high-end. I need comprehensive security infrastructure. My board suggested you're the best." They discussed specifications for an hour. Santiago was smooth, professional. Too smooth. Arthur had interviewed enough intelligence assets to recognize when someone was playing a role. "I'll have my team draft a proposal," Arthur said finally. "Should have something by end of week." "Perfect." Santiago stood. "By the way, I think we have a mutual acquaintance. Lauren Maxwell Ford? She handled some legal work for one of my subsidiaries last year." Small world. Arthur's expression didn't change. Very small. After Santiago left, Arthur pulled up Graham Holdings on his computer. Impressive growth, but the financial reporting felt off. Too many shell companies, too many transfers to offshore accounts. Nothing obviously illegal, but the pattern was familiar. He'd seen similar structures in intelligence work, money laundering, probably. His phone rang. "Lauren, hey, I need to work late tonight," she said, voice bright and false. "Client crisis. Might be past midnight." "No problem," Arthur replied. "I'll save you some dinner." After hanging up, Arthur did something he'd never done before. He activated the tracking app on Lauren's phone, software he'd installed years ago for emergencies. The blinking dot appeared on his screen. She wasn't at her office. She was at the Riverside Hotel. Arthur felt something cold settle in his chest. He pulled up the hotel's booking system, easy enough with his security clearance contacts, and found the room reservation. Presidential suite. Registered to Santiago Graham. 3 hours later, Arthur sat in his car across from the hotel, watching Lauren emerge with Santiago. They didn't touch in public, but the intimacy was obvious. Santiago's hand on the small of her back. Lauren's laugh at something he said. Arthur didn't feel angry. He felt analytical. This wasn't just an affair. It was a connection to a client who appeared specifically because he knew about Lauren. Santiago had researched him, targeted him. Why? The next 2 weeks, Arthur played the oblivious husband while conducting his own investigation. He accepted Santiago's contract, using it as cover to dig deeper. Raymond met him at McGinty's pub, their usual spot. Over whiskey, Arthur laid out everything. Jesus, Art. Raymond shook his head. Why not just confront her? Divorce the woman. Because something bigger is happening. Arthur pulled out his tablet, showing financial analysis. Santiago Graham's business is built on fraud. He's leveraging properties he doesn't own, using investor money to fund a lifestyle. The whole thing's a house of cards. When it collapses, and it will, people are going to prison. So he's a crook screwing your wife. Still doesn't. I'm listed as the security consultant on his new development. My name's on the filings. Arthur met Raymond's eyes. If this goes south, I'm the fall guy. And there's a $2 million life insurance policy on me. Lauren's the beneficiary. Raymond went pale. You think they're planning to? I think Santiago needed someone with security credentials to make his project look legitimate. I think he seduced my wife to get to me. And I think when his empire falls, they're planning to make sure I'm not around to testify. We need to go to the police. With what evidence? An affair and financial records that could be explained away. Arthur shook his head. No, I need proof of intent, and I need to flip this on them. That night, Arthur installed hidden cameras in his house. Audio recorders. He cloned Lauren's phone completely. Every text, every email, every call. What he found made his blood run cold. Text from Santiago to Lauren. 3 days ago, Jeffrey confirmed he can handle the scene. Make sure Arthur's home alone Friday night. No witnesses. Lauren's reply. He'll be there. Finalize the payment. Jeffrey. Arthur cross-referenced the name with Santiago's known associates. Jeffrey Harden, a detective with Arlington PD, decorated officer, but rumors of corruption had followed him for years. They were planning to kill him. Make it look like a home invasion. A dirty cop would control the crime scene, ensure the investigation went nowhere. Arthur sat in his office, hands steady despite the adrenaline. He'd faced death before, but never like this, betrayed by the woman he'd loved, targeted by men who saw him as nothing more than a disposable pawn. Friday was in 2 days. He could run, disappear. He had the skills. But Arthur Ford had spent his life outsmarting enemies. He'd survived ambushes in hostile territory by being smarter, faster, more ruthless when necessary. They wanted him dead? He'd give them a corpse. But first, he'd make sure every one of them paid. Friday arrived with overcast skies and a bitter wind. Arthur spent the day preparing with military precision. He'd arranged for Raymond to be nearby with backup, 2 other former Army intelligence officers, both trusted completely. He'd positioned cameras with live feeds to secure servers. He'd even contacted an old colleague at the FBI, leaving encrypted files to be opened if anything happened to him. But the key to his plan was simpler than all of that. Arthur had hired someone to play him. Guillermo Arroyo was a private security contractor Arthur had worked with before, similar build, same height, skilled actor. At 8 p.m., Guillermo entered Arthur's house through the back door, wearing Arthur's clothes, a realistic mask that could pass cursory inspection from a distance. The Real Arthur Ford was in his car 3 blocks away, watching everything through his phone. Lauren had texted earlier, working late again. Don't wait up. At 9:15 p.m., Arthur's home security system registered movement in the backyard. A figure in dark clothes, face covered, approached the rear entrance. Jeffrey Harden. Arthur recognized him from his research. Guillermo played his role perfectly, moving through the house naturally, sitting in Arthur's office. Then Jeffrey moved. Fast, professional. He'd done this before. But Guillermo was faster. The ex-Delta Force operator disarmed Jeffrey in seconds, zip-tied his hands, removed his mask. Detective Harden, Guillermo said calmly. Arthur Ford sends his regards. That's when Arthur made the call. 911. What's your emergency? Arthur deepened his voice slightly, injected panic. There's a prowler outside my house. I can see someone trying to break in. What's your address, sir? Arthur gave his home address. The dispatcher paused. Sir, that's not possible. We have 2 officers at that address already. Arthur's heart hammered, but he stayed in character. I don't see any officers. What are you talking about? The dispatcher's voice dropped to a whisper, genuine confusion and horror. I know. They're responding to a homicide call we received 15 minutes ago. The victim's name is Arthur Ford. What? Arthur made his voice crack. That's my name. I'm Arthur Ford. I'm alive. Sir, stay on the line. I'm sending units to your location immediately. Do not hang up. Arthur disconnected. Phase 1 complete. Someone else had called 911 claiming to report Arthur's murder. That could only be Santiago or Lauren, setting up the narrative before Jeffrey even struck. But they'd jumped too early, probably assuming Jeffrey had already done the job. Now the police were coming to find a very alive Arthur Ford, a tied-up detective with burglary tools, and enough evidence to start asking serious questions. Arthur drove toward the Riverside Hotel, where his tracking showed Lauren was currently located. Santiago would be with her. Time to introduce himself to his would-be killers. The presidential suite door opened on the second knock. Santiago Graham stood there in a silk robe, drink in hand, confidence radiating from every pore. Until he saw Arthur. The glass slipped from Santiago's fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Hello, Santiago. Arthur stepped inside, closing the door behind him. We need to talk. Lauren emerged from the bedroom, freezing when she saw her husband. The color drained from her face. Arthur, what are you doing alive? Arthur smiled without warmth. Funny story. Your hired killer is currently in police custody. They found him breaking into my house with a gun. Very unfortunate for you both. Santiago recovered quickly, his lawyer instincts kicking in. I have no idea what you're talking about. Lauren and I were just discussing legal matters. In a hotel suite. At 10 p.m., while she told me she was working late at the office. Arthur pulled out his phone, playing an audio recording. Jeffrey confirmed he can handle the scene. Make sure Arthur's home alone Friday night. Lauren's face crumbled. Arthur, please, I can explain. Can you explain conspiracy to commit murder? Arthur's voice was ice. Because that's what this is. Detective Hardin is currently cooperating with internal affairs. He's smart enough to know when to cut a deal. He's already given statements about who hired him. It was a bluff. Jeffrey hadn't talked yet, but Arthur had learned in interrogations that guilty people filled in their own blanks. Santiago's mask slipped. You arrogant bastard. You think you're so clever? I built an empire while you played soldier and security guard. Lauren came to me because she wanted more than your mediocre life could offer. Your empire is fraud, Arthur replied calmly. Graham Holdings is underwater. You've been using new investor money to pay old debts, falsifying property values, laundering funds through shell corporations. I've spent 2 weeks documenting everything. When I'm done testifying, you'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison. You have nothing that would hold up in court. I have your communications with offshore accounts. I have testimony from your contractors about kickbacks. I have evidence you've been bribing city officials. Arthur paused. And I have every text message, email, and phone call between you and my wife planning my murder. That tends to make prosecutors very interested in your other crimes. Lauren was crying now. I never wanted you dead. Santiago said he said we'd be together, that the insurance money would set us up. I didn't know he was going to. Shut up, Lauren. Santiago snapped. But she kept talking, the dam breaking. He said you'd never find out. That Jeffrey would make it look like a robbery. That I'd be the grieving widow, and we'd wait a year before going public with our relationship. Arthur felt nothing but cold satisfaction. He was recording everything. Arthur, please. Lauren reached for him. I made a mistake. I was stupid and selfish, and I'm sorry. But we can fix this. We can. There's nothing to fix. Arthur stepped back. You tried to have me killed for insurance money and a life with a con artist. You destroyed 10 years of marriage. And for what? A man who's going to prison? Nobody's going to prison, Santiago snarled. You think you're the only one with leverage? I have contacts. Judges, prosecutors, people who owe me favors. You're a nobody, Ford. A washed-up soldier playing detective. I'll destroy you in court. Arthur smiled. Probably. You have money, connections, expensive lawyers. Which is why I'm not going to court. What? Santiago's confidence wavered. I'm going to destroy you a different way. Arthur headed for the door. Enjoy your last night of freedom. Both of you. Arthur didn't sleep that night. He worked. By dawn, he'd sent encrypted files to 3 major newspapers, the FBI, the SEC, and the Virginia Attorney General's office. The files contained everything: Santiago's financial crimes, the murder conspiracy, Lauren's complicity, Jeffrey Hardin's corruption. But that was just the foundation. The real genius was in how Arthur had structured the exposure. He'd learned from his intelligence work that timing was everything. Release too much at once, and powerful people could contain it. Release it in waves, each revelation building on the last, and the target had nowhere to hide. Phase 1. At 6 a.m., the Washington Tribune published an expose on Detective Jeffrey Hardin's arrest for attempted murder. The article mentioned he'd been caught breaking into a security consultant's home, armed, and with clear intent to kill. Phase 2. At 9 a.m., the financial press received leaked documents showing Graham Holdings' questionable accounting practices. Stock prices began to plummet. Phase 3. At noon, the SEC announced an investigation into Graham Holdings for securities fraud. Phase 4. At 2 p.m., court documents were filed showing Lauren Maxwell Ford's involvement in a conspiracy to murder her husband for insurance money. By 3 p.m., Santiago Graham's world was on fire. Arthur watched the news coverage from Raymond's apartment. His friend sat beside him, shaking his head in amazement. "You actually did it. You destroyed them both in less than 12 hours. "Not yet," Arthur said. "Santiago still has his lawyers. He'll try to fight this, make deals, throw everyone else under the bus. Men like him always do. So what's your next move?" Arthur pulled up a file on his laptop. "Santiago's construction project, the one he hired me to secure? I found something interesting while reviewing the plans. The foundation work on the building was substandard. He used cheap materials, paid off the inspectors, cut corners everywhere to maximize profit. So it's unsafe? Catastrophically." Arthur showed Raymond engineering reports he'd commissioned independently. "If that building goes up and people move in, it could collapse within 5 years. Hundreds could die." Raymond whistled low. "You're going to report it." "Already did. To every regulatory agency that will listen. But more than that." Arthur pulled up another file. "I found the names of every investor in Santiago's project. Pension funds, retirement accounts, regular people who trusted him with their money. I've contacted them all, shown them what he's done. They'll sue him into oblivion. They already are. Class action lawsuits filed this morning." Arthur leaned back. Santiago Graham built his empire on lies and other people's money. Now those people are taking it back. His phone rang. "Unknown number." "Arthur Ford," he answered. "You son of a bitch." Santiago's voice was ragged, desperate. "You've destroyed everything. My company, my reputation, my life." "You destroyed your own life when you decided to murder me," Arthur replied calmly. "I'll kill you myself. I swear to God." Empty threats from a finished man. "Your assets are frozen, Santiago. Your investors are suing. The FBI is building a case that will put you away for 20 years minimum. And that's before the murder conspiracy charges. I have money hidden away. Offshore accounts you'll never find. I can disappear, start over, and when I do, I'll come for you." Arthur smiled. "You mean the accounts in the Cayman Islands? The ones in your mother's maiden name?" "Already froze them. Worked with some old intelligence contacts. Turns out financial crimes with international implications get special attention." Silence on the other end. "You have nothing left," Arthur continued. "No money, no influence, no future except prison. That's what happens when you underestimate your enemy." "Why?" Santiago's voice broke. "Why go this far? You could have just divorced Lauren, moved on. Why ruin me?" "Because you tried to take my life," Arthur said quietly. "Not just kill me, erase me like I was nothing. Like I was a piece of trash to be disposed of for your convenience. You wanted me dead so you could steal my wife and my insurance money and build your fraudulent empire on my grave." He paused. "So I took everything from you instead. Your freedom, your wealth, your reputation, your future. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Just like you wanted me to die with yours." Arthur hung up. Raymond stared at him. "That was cold, man." "That was justice," Arthur corrected. "The legal system will handle the official punishment. But I wanted him to know that he didn't just lose. He lost to someone he thought was beneath him. That's a wound that won't heal." 1 week later, Santiago Graham's arrest made national news. Arthur watched from his attorney's office as federal marshals led Santiago out in handcuffs. The man who'd been so confident, so untouchable, now looked small and broken. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his eyes. Lauren was arrested the same day. Conspiracy to commit murder carried serious time, even with cooperation. Her legal career was over. Her life as she'd known it was finished. Arthur felt nothing watching her perp walk. No satisfaction, no pain, just emptiness. "The prosecutor wants to meet with you," Marcia Lamb, his attorney, said. She was sharp and efficient, came highly recommended. "They're building an airtight case, but your testimony will seal it." "I'll testify to everything," Arthur replied. "Every detail." Detective Jeffrey Harden had already pleaded guilty to attempted murder and corruption charges. Facing 25 years, he'd given up everything: names, dates, payments, the entire conspiracy. His testimony corroborated everything Arthur had documented. But the real earthquake came from Santiago's business collapse. Graham Holdings declared bankruptcy within 72 hours. The investigation uncovered fraud totaling over $200 million. Investors who trusted Santiago lost everything. The media called it one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in Virginia history. Federal agents raided every property, every shell corporation. They found evidence of bribes, kickbacks, money laundering. The web of corruption was staggering. And at the center of it all was Santiago Graham, the architect of his own destruction. Arthur's phone rang. "Raymond, turn on Channel 7. You'll want to see this." Arthur switched on the TV in the conference room. A news anchor was speaking. "In a shocking development, 3 city councilors have been arrested in connection with the Graham Holdings scandal. Sources say they accepted bribes totaling over $500,000 to approve building permits and overlook safety violations." More arrests. More dominoes falling. Marcia whistled. "You really kicked over an anthill. This is going to be investigated for years." "Good," Arthur said. "Every person who helped Santiago should answer for it." That evening, Arthur returned to his house for the first time since the attempted murder. It felt strange, walking through rooms that should have been his crime scene. The life he'd built here with Lauren was ash now. He stood in the bedroom, looking at their wedding photo on the nightstand. 10 years. All lies. No, he decided. Parts of it had been real, once. But people changed. Or maybe they just revealed who they'd always been. Arthur packed the photo away. Time to move forward. A knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, nervous. He didn't recognize her. "Can I help you?" Arthur asked through the door. "Mr. Ford? My name is Susan Grimes. I need to talk to you. Please. It's about Santiago Graham." Arthur's instincts flared. Caution warred with curiosity. "How did you find my address?" "I'm an investigator. I've been following Santiago for years." She held up credentials. "I work for a private firm. Please. Just 5 minutes." Arthur opened the door, keeping his distance. "What do you want?" Susan looked haunted. "My daughter, Brittany. She worked for Santiago 3 years ago. Paralegal, bright future ahead of her. She discovered his fraud, threatened to report it." Arthur's blood chilled. "What happened to her?" "Car accident. Police ruled it mechanical failure, brake line rupture. But I never believed it." Tears welled in Susan's eyes. "I've spent 3 years trying to prove Santiago had her killed. I hired investigators, reviewed evidence, but I could never get enough for charges. And now he's exposed. Now the FBI is digging through everything. I gave them my files this morning. They're reopening Brittany's case as a potential homicide." Susan met his eyes. "I wanted to thank you. Because of what you did, my daughter might finally get justice." Arthur felt the weight of that. His revenge hadn't just been about himself. It had exposed a monster who'd hurt countless others. "I'm sorry about Brittany," he said quietly. "If there's anything I can do to help the investigation." "You've already done more than you know." Susan touched his arm gently. "You stopped him. You made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. That's worth everything." After she left, Arthur sat alone in the gathering darkness. He'd thought his revenge was about punishment, about making them pay. But it was bigger than that. It was about protection, about making sure Santiago Graham never had the power to destroy another life. That realization changed something in him, softened the edges of his anger. 3 months later, the trial began. Arthur sat in the witness stand, facing the courtroom. Santiago's expensive legal team had tried every trick to suppress evidence, dismiss charges, delay proceedings. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor, a fierce woman named Naomi Bernard, led Arthur through his testimony with precision. "Mr. Ford, Please describe the events of September 13th. Arthur recounted everything: the investigation, the discovery of the murder plot, the confrontation. He spoke calmly, factually, letting the truth speak for itself. Santiago's lawyer, Alan Baird, tried to discredit him during cross-examination. "Isn't it true, Mr. Ford, that you broke into Mr. Graham's hotel room without permission?" "I knocked. He opened the door. I was invited in." "Isn't it true you have a history of violence from your military service?" "I have a history of defending innocent people from those who would harm them." "Yes. Isn't it possible you fabricated this entire conspiracy because you were jealous of Mr. Graham's relationship with your wife?" Arthur met Santiago's eyes across the courtroom. "If I'd wanted revenge for the affair, I would have just divorced her. I only acted when I discovered they were planning to murder me." The jury listened intently. They'd seen the evidence: text messages, financial records, Jeffrey Hardin's testimony. There was no reasonable doubt. Lauren testified next, her lawyer having negotiated a plea deal. She looked broken, aged 10 years and 3 months. "Did you conspire with Santiago Graham to murder your husband?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes." Lauren's voice was barely audible. "I'm so sorry. I was selfish and stupid, and I destroyed everything." "Did you understand that Arthur Ford would be killed?" Santiago said. "He said it would be quick, that Arthur wouldn't suffer. Like that made it better." She sobbed. "I told myself it wasn't real, that it wouldn't actually happen. But I knew. God help me, I knew." The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Santiago Graham was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, bribery, and money laundering. With good behavior, he might see freedom again in his 70s. Lauren received 10 years for conspiracy to commit murder, with the possibility of parole after 7. Her cooperation had reduced her sentence, but not the weight of her crime. Detective Jeffrey Hardin got 15 years. His badge and gun were gone. His reputation was destroyed. Arthur watched the sentencing from the gallery. He felt Raymond's hand on his shoulder. "It's over," his friend said. "Yeah," Arthur replied. "It's over." 6 months after the trial, Arthur Ford stood in his new office. Ford Security Solutions had moved to a larger space downtown. The publicity from the case, "Man Uncovers Murder Plot, Exposes Massive Fraud," had brought in more clients than he could handle. He'd hired a staff of 12, including 3 other former military intelligence officers. But more than business success, something else had changed. Arthur had testified before Congress about security vulnerabilities in financial oversight, helping to draft legislation to prevent frauds like Santiago's. He'd worked with the FBI to train agents on recognizing complex money laundering schemes. Susan Grimes had become a friend. The FBI had indeed reopened Brittany's case, finding evidence that Santiago had ordered her death. More charges, more time added to his sentence. Susan finally had answers, if not peace. Arthur had also started a foundation in Brittany's name, helping families of corporate crime victims navigate the legal system. Using his settlement from Lauren's assets and his own resources, he'd created something positive from the darkness. One evening, Raymond joined him for drinks at McGinty's pub. Their tradition resumed. "How you holding up?" Raymond asked. "Better. Some days are harder than others." Arthur sipped his whiskey. "I thought I'd feel more vindicated, triumphant. But mostly I just feel tired. You took down a killer, saved lives, and exposed corruption. You're allowed to be tired." I keep thinking about what Susan said. If I hadn't investigated, if I'd just ignored the affair, Santiago would still be out there. How many more people would he have hurt? "But he's not," Raymond pointed out. "Because you were smart enough to see through him and brave enough to act. That's not nothing, Art." A woman approached their table, Marcia Lamb, his attorney. "Mind if I join you? Wanted to update you on the civil suits." "Please." Arthur gestured to a chair. Marcia grinned. "All the investors in Graham Holdings have settled. You're getting a percentage as a whistleblower under federal law. Should be a substantial amount." "How substantial?" $3 million. "After taxes." Arthur blinked. "I wasn't expecting that. Fraud cases with successful prosecution often reward those who expose them. You earn this." Marcia raised her glass. "To justice, and to getting paid for it." They drank to that. Later, Arthur walked alone through the city streets. The night air was cool, stars barely visible through the light pollution. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, happily married, or so he'd thought, successful but complacent, unaware of the predators circling. That man was gone. This Arthur Ford was harder, wiser, more cautious, but also more purposeful. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but instinct made him pick up. Arthur Ford. Mr. Ford, this is Clark Thomas with the FBI. I'm heading up a new task force on corporate corruption and organized crime. I've reviewed your work on the Graham case. I'd like to discuss a consulting position with us. Arthur smiled. I'm listening. 2 months later, Arthur stood before a class of FBI recruits, teaching them how to identify complex fraud schemes and murder conspiracies. The key, he told them, is understanding that criminals think they're smarter than you. They think they've planned for everything, covered every angle. Your job is to be patient, methodical, and smarter. Gather evidence. Build an airtight case. And when you move decisively. He thought of Santiago Graham, rotting in a federal prison. Of Lauren, who'd destroyed her life for a fantasy. Of Detective Hardin, who'd sold his badge for cash. They'd all thought they were clever. They'd all thought Arthur Ford was just a target, an obstacle to be removed. They'd learned differently. After class, Arthur checked his email. A message from Susan Grimes. The appeals court upheld Santiago's conviction. Brittany's case goes to trial next month. Thank you for never giving up. Thank you for making sure he pays for everything he's done. Arthur typed back. He played a game he thought he'd already won. But he forgot that the best chess players think 10 moves ahead. Justice isn't always fast, but it's inevitable if you're patient enough. He closed his laptop and looked out the window at the Virginia sunset. Somewhere out there were other predators, other Santiago Grahams who thought they were untouchable. But Arthur Ford was watching now, and he'd learned that the best revenge wasn't just destroying your enemies. It was making sure they could never hurt anyone again. The dead man had lived, and in living, he'd become something more than he'd been before. He'd become a guardian. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.